Last week, AI listened to my sales calls and it told me that I wobbled on pricing, I filled the silence when I should have shut up, and I was too soft going for the close. Now, this is tough feedback for somebody that's taken thousands of calls and coached a lot of other people on sales, but honestly, all three pieces of feedback were right. If you own the business or you're the boss, nobody's coaching you. And that means that we have blind spots that we can't see, but who said we're not trying to get better too? But with AI, now we've got some tools where we can get that feedback. So here's the system that I've built and I've been running in my sales calls. So here's the core problem. The higher up you go or the longer you've been running your own business, the less coaching that you get. And everybody else is expecting you to coach them. Getting feedback is one of the best ways to kind of prevent that bias and that routine from happening. It reminds me of when I was a college athlete, we would go and we would film practice, every single play, every single rep, and then immediately after practice, we would go in and we'd watch the film in front of the whole team, and you knew exactly what you did well or what you needed to improve on. And so when you went out to the next practice, you just took that and you implemented it immediately. And this rate of feedback just allows you to move faster and make better plays. So here's what I've been doing on my sales calls to get that coaching. I record every single call. Then I take the transcript and I upload it to AI within 15 minutes of my sales call. I say, act like a sales coach, give me some feedback on what I did well and what I need to improve on. Then I get the coaching and the sales call is still fresh in my mind and I can go back and forth chatting with it, pushing back on some things or agreeing on others or asking deeper probing questions to kind of figure out like if I was on the right thread, if AI is actually giving me the proper feedback, or kind of where things land on that sales call. So I did this for about 5 sales calls, and here were 3 mistakes that it identified I was making. Number 1, I was wobbling on pricing. I just hopped into my calls and I didn't have the pricing script nailed. And there was a couple different options for the product pricing and I sort of whiffed on it and I miscalculated some of the total package costs, what the weekly breakdown was, and I kind of had to go back and forth. And yeah, I was able to sort of massage my way and kind of talk my way through it, but it was not as tight. And so one of the pieces the AI was saying was like, write your script, get it tighter, because when it comes to that part, you want to be totally firm and say it and deliver it nicely. And I was like, okay, that's actually really good feedback. And then that leads me to the second point of what it told me is, hey, you jumped in and you filled the silence right after you let the pricing drop. You want to fill that silence, right? With an or how does that sound or something like that. But most of the sales literature out there in the coaching says when you put that pricing out there, just let it sit and let the prospect respond to that. And after these 5 calls, I noticed that, yeah, I definitely wasn't doing that. I was filling the silence. It was a classic rookie move that I was doing after thousands of calls and I didn't really realize it. Now, the last piece of feedback that kind of hurt my spirit and my heart was it saying that I was too soft in going for the close. I'm definitely not somebody that identifies as being soft or not going for the ask or, closing deals and getting money. But I think there was some truth in what it was saying. I was dressing up my close a little bit too, is that potentially in budget? Or would that potentially work for your schedule? Which I do think is like a good way to frame something so that person feels like there's a level of deference of their, I'm being polite kind of in the sales process. But after a couple of these calls and thinking about it, I think it was a little bit too dressed up in some of that and it needed to be clearer in terms of going for the ask. And when it came to some of those objections, hey, I need to talk to my husband about it. I didn't say, well, totally, what do you think your husband's going to say? Do you think he's not going to want you to do this? Or what are you guys going to kind of talk about to see if this could be a good decision? And I passed on some of those follow-up questions when it comes to explaining away their concerns, which I would train another rep on, like, hey, you always have to kind of dive into that. Ask them what they're going to talk about. But I wasn't doing it on my own. And so identifying a couple of those common things, which I know and I always train other people on, but when I reflect the mirror back at myself, it's like, yeah, I wasn't doing some of those pieces. And had I not been recording and looking for that feedback, I would have probably still kept going on my way, making a lot of the same rookie mistakes that I can see in a bunch of new sales reps I was making on my own. So this process has been net positive for me for sure, but there definitely are some limitations. One is it doesn't listen to the vocal inflection. So it can't hear how you go up on questions. It can't hear how you dive into things. It can't hear sort of how you're smiling on the phone. How you say something and deliver it has a massive impact on if that message is heard one way versus another. I can say it straight, sort of like this, or I can say it straight, sort of like this. The second limitation is you have to go back and forth on some of these things. I found myself having to push back a lot, and I didn't know if it was just my own bias and kind of like me feeling like, whoa, I don't know about that coaching feedback, or if that was actually true. So for example, it might have said, hey, you were too soft in going for the close here, or you didn't actually move the deal onto that next piece. But I know that I went from the price anchoring on one to the offer that would work. I let that sit for a while. And then when they said price again, I went for downsell one, I went for downsell two. And really at the end of the day, I got to this lead and it was just probably not somebody that was ever going to convert. AI was saying, hey, you didn't close that one. But I'm like, no, this was just a lead from the jump that wasn't actually having like the budget or the finances to be able to pull this off. And I know that because I did XYZ thing. And then AI is like, oh yeah, you're right. And that kind of cracked a little bit in the system of how much can I really trust you on this. But I still think when I go back to the net positive things that came from it, it was overall super helpful. Now, a couple bonus unlocks that you can use with these transcripts. You can feed, say, your top 10 closes to it, and you can say, look for patterns on why these deals closed. It could be the type of ad that they're coming from. It could be things that the sales rep said, and you can mine it for pattern recognition. And that's something that's like a very low effort thing on your end with a ton of high leverage that you could potentially move up into your creative to say, hey, this type of person that purchases our product says these things. Let's go live with a creative like that. And then if you put that out there, you might, because bees are attracted to honey, you might bring back more people that you know are more likely to close based on the data that you have in your transcript. So if you own your own business, if you're running your own sales calls, if nobody's coaching you, this is a super low lift but high leverage system that's going to allow you to get immediate coaching that you feed right back into your sales calls and identify blind spots before they cost you money.